Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the Demystifying Money podcast. I'm your host, Misty Lynch, and today I am joined by April Hunter. She is the founder of the Beacon Rock, and we're going to talk about money and energy today and how she helps people with her business. So thank you, April, so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be on here because I feel like the podcast really speaks to what I do and what I've discovered about money.
This episode of Demystifying Money with Misty Lynch is proudly sponsored by Soundview Financial Advisors. Visit www.soundviewfinancialadvisors.com to learn more.
That's awesome. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your backstory and how you the journey that you took to become the owner of the Beacon Rock, and kind of how you help your clients now and in the future, future clients with their money questions.
I feel like it's kind of like an evolution story, like millions of years ago.
But can't be that long, right?
We'll shortcut that. Long story short, that wonderful cliche that we all hate to and still always use is I started selling on Amazon and eBay about 10-ish years ago. And I discovered really quickly that there wasn't accountants who really knew how to do the bookkeeping and accounting for that kind of new market of seller. And so I founded Beacon Rock, really tailored to them. Okay. But in that, I started discovering not only my money wounds, but everybody else's money wounds. And I started to really want to figure out like what is happening collectively, what's happening personally that's really affecting our money. And as that advanced and as businesses grew with me, I started focusing less on bookkeeping, less on accounting, and more on fractional CFO, growth, profit first systems that really, really are simple so that you can have the time and space to work through your money wounds and grow your business and scale without completely killing your business. And so it's really kind of come full circle where right now we work on the foundational aspects of you as a person and the foundational aspects of your business financially with a whole bunch of metaphysics, which include like human design, the I Ching, the Kabbalah, a lot of astrology. And we really, really work with a lot of planetary aspects to it and how they're affecting what's going on collectively in society right now, as well as how do you use those as an advantage to grow. So that's kind of the short
interesting
version.
All right, there's a lot there. First I'll start with, so I think it's interesting that you first founded the business because you saw that there was a gap in the market when it came to being able to do the accounting. So when you're selling on Amazon, is it because of the way that most accountants are used to working with like inventory of your own products and sales, or what was the complicated part that you felt like some of the people who are working in newer, different industries were kind of underserved? What was the disconnect there?
So we have to remember, like, the internet hasn't been around very long. So when there's a huge influx of internet businesses, a lot of times you'll just see the sales come through. And what I kept seeing is that there was a massive amount of fees and sales taxes and all kinds of shipping charges be coming in, and people were booking the sales as just like, that's your sales number and it all nets out. But when you get your 1099 at the end of the year, you are missing sometimes tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of what you paid in sales taxes and that disconnect. And then they weren't being reflected on people's tax returns. And so they were missing off on tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars of write-offs because of the way that these accountants were doing the bookkeeping. And this, I ran into this because that's what happened to me. And I was like, this tax return is not right. Like, this is not how this should be done. And so I was like, this is how it really needs to be booked. Luckily, there's fantastic services out there now that will like translate all of those things. But at the time that I started it, like, it was new frontier land of third-party sellers on Amazon.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And I do think, like you said, business is evolving. And I think that there are a lot of the industries, a lot of finance is just kind of stuck in the, well, this is how we've always done it type of thing. And we're seeing a lot of changes as the way businesses operate and, even just the introduction of different technologies and things to help streamline that process and grow. But I think that that's great that you kind of were able to then start there, but then move forward into helping people with that fractional CFO growth and profit type of work.
Mhm.
So tell me a little bit more about that. Like, when would somebody think that they may need to reach out to somebody for a fractional CFO? What are some of the signs there? Because a lot of people are familiar with bookkeepers and CPAs, but they might not know exactly what that can do to help them expand their business.
So a fractional CFO comes into place, especially when you're growing or scaling, or when you're thinking about taking yourself out of the business and running it more as the business owner rather than the business operator. It's really, really easy to run a business as an operator and then forget to pay yourself. But when you're starting to take yourself out as the business owner and you're starting to scale it so that other employees are really, really taking over a lot of tasks, or you're adding extra vans if you're an electrician, or you're adding a ton of inventory. When you have those really, really big growth, big money spend differences in your business, if you don't have a plan of how you're going to save the money and transfer the money and charge extra and build that into your pricing, and then deal with all the forecasts and how society is going to spend their money over the next 12 months, 18 months, 5 years, then you really, really just kind of are like shooting and throwing money into a black hole, and you hope that it comes back as more money. So if it really helps to eliminate a lot of that stress of those growth moments. So it's, a lot of people will say that it's somewhere between like $250,000 to $500,000 in sales. I work with a lot of clients who actually have less sales than that. And we just kind of set up simple systems for them so that they have that growth built in. Because I don't feel like you have to be at that $250,000 a year sales mark to grow. So that's part of why I became a certified profit first professional, was to help build that growth into that profit first system that they already have. That really, really helps you save for taxes and make sure that you pay yourself too.
I think profit first is it's a concept I'm familiar with. I read the book. I like it. And I think that there's some people that I talk to, and I think that this is an interesting part, because when we are employees, we always care about how we get paid, how much we get paid, when we get paid, all of those things. But a lot of times I'll talk to entrepreneurs or business owners who are not paying themselves, or they're not paying themselves properly or at all. And so can you briefly describe what the profit first, technique is, and how it helps business owners who maybe feel like they're making money, it's coming in, it's going out the door, but they're not exactly feeling like they're making what they did before they left their regular paying job?
Yeah. So Profit First is a book written by Mike Michalowicz. He kind of had a $700 million business and ran it into the ground because he wasn't paying himself and he wasn't preparing for taxes and any of these big growth expenses. So he created this system that works similarly to like small plates for dieting. Whereas if you have a smaller plate, you won't eat more than what's on that plate and you still feel full. So what it does is it kind of flips the normal accounting equation where you have your income come in and then you have your expenses and you have your profit at the end of the day. And it flips it so that you think about your profit and your owners pay first. And what that really, really does is it just leaves after you pay yourself and after you pay your profit, you then have room for your expenses. And so it really, really makes you tighten your budget and not have those impulse indecision spending that we all get as entrepreneurs of like, oh, it's a shiny object and I don't have to work as hard. Whereas like, can I actually afford this shiny object? Is it going to grow? And then you have to make the decision of whether you're going to actually pay yourself less to get that, or if you really, really like to pay yourself. But it also saves for taxes, which is a huge, huge, huge thing right now of like, do we have the money to pay for taxes? And implementing it in businesses, you see them going from these huge tax bills where they're like, oh my gosh, like I think I'm going to lose my house just so I can pay this tax bill, to, their cash flow is so good that they have all this money saved for taxes, and then they don't owe that much taxes with all the, fractional CFO and tax planning that you do. And then they get to pay themselves a bonus instead of pay the government taxes. And it's such a cool transformation to see.
Yeah. I think that's something that a lot of business owners are, especially that first year in business where that tax you know, the tax event could be a big surprise. It could be something that they weren't accounting for all year. They could be like, wait, I don't understand because, I didn't make that much or I didn't pay myself that much. And so I think it can be something that a lot of business owners are very surprised by. But I do feel like once you have a system in place, there are definitely things that you could do to build that tax strategy. I have talked to some people that are having a little bit of difficulty, like getting tax strategy from from their CPA or somebody who's maybe has a very intense, busy workload. And so they feel like they are uploading their documents, but they're not getting that tax strategy. Is that something where you feel like, I know I help a lot of people with the type of retirement accounts that they could potentially set up in order to start to move some of that money, into a retirement plan that works for their particular business and how that's set up to kind of help reduce the taxes. But is that where the fractional CFO can really help somebody who is looking for that tax strategy versus just kind of that little amount of contact they might be getting?
It really helps to have a CFO who does have some tax planning or
Mhm.
some tax background. A
Yeah.
lot of CFOs don't have that. They just have the looking forward, the projections and the budgeting and all of that, but they don't necessarily have the tax planning. If your CPA is not getting back to you on your tax planning, they really, really should be. As the tax returns that I do, I enjoy the tax planning way more than
Yeah.
doing the taxes.
Mhm.
Um, for me, taxes has always been like this puzzle of
Mhm.
like figuring out where the pieces go and where we could do better and how we could save people money. And so it's this game for me that I really enjoy doing and helping people see the fuller picture, see how they can really, really use the tax codes for their advantage. So if your CPA isn't getting back to you, there are just plain tax planners. You don't have to
Mhm.
have your CPA do that. A lot of financial planners are also tax planners. And a lot of CFOs or fractional CFOs will also do tax planning, but taxes should be on your mind 365 days a year, not, two.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that that is something that most business owners, if they haven't come to that realization yet, will at some point understand that. And the tax laws are consistent. They're changing and evolving just like businesses. So I think that that could be something that you want to make sure that you have on your radar and that you understand, not only so you know what you're going to owe, but also so you could take advantage of certain things that might benefit you that maybe you haven't been aware of, or maybe they haven't been around for too long. So very, very
Mhm.
important on that side of it. So I think the fractional CFO piece is really, that makes sense. But I would love to hear a little bit more about how you bring in that quantum soul alignment that you mentioned before, because
Mhm.
we are typically thought of as people who are working in the spreadsheets and the numbers. However, I
Yeah.
do think it's really interesting to think about how all of this energy and how all of, the things that we've lived through that got us where we are today impact the decisions that we make in the future. So, when did you decide to bring that into your business and how well was it received when you first decided to do that?
So I am probably seen as a pariah to many, many accountants, bookkeepers, and black and white financial people.
Hmm.
Um, I really started looking at my own finances and really, really was looking at like how I was manifesting my own money, how I was manifesting my own future, how I was really, really growing my own business, and how the language that I was using was really affecting how I presented myself to the world. And in that, I discovered human design and quantum human design and how the language that you use literally changes reality. So if you tell water that you love it before you freeze it, it will turn into a snowflake. But if you tell water that it makes you sick before you freeze it, it will turn into slush. And so the same concept applies to money. If you start talking about abundance,
Hmm.
abundance is having your basic needs met, is what I have discovered. So when you start seeing ad copy for we're going to make you so abundant,
Hmm.
I personally want more than abundance. I
Hmm.
would love prosperity, opulence, luxury. And you think back to the words that you used for the kids who were richer than you when you were growing up. And then you start to build this scale of what is your money reality and where do you actually want to be with your money? And you
Hmm.
start implementing those words into your everyday practice. And it is drastically life-changing what happens to your bank balance. So on a spreadsheet, I then started becoming really, really obsessed with the astrological transits and this thing called the ephemeris. Okay. And it ties into human design, the I Ching, the Kabbalah, and human design. And so what I did in the spreadsheet is I started assigning every gate what that place was astrologically and looking at what are the planets actually trying to tell us about our money and how we can heal our money wounds and what we should be looking at so that we can grow our wealth. So for the remainder of March, which is funny that our stock market is falling so badly, is that we are really, really having this reflection period and this anxiety while Venus is in retrograde. And then we're going to be started to be asking to look at self-acceptance. Like, how do we accept ourselves? How do we love ourselves through all of April? And so when we really, really start to look at these little aspects of how does me loving myself affect whether or not I can attract clients, and you start to realize like, oh, my mom told me this when I was little, and so I've never been able to present myself this way publicly. And you start to heal that on a psychological level, then you're able to attract more clients in and your balance grows. So when you follow these transits and you follow the energy that everything is asking you to look at, money becomes really, really magical.
Yeah, I think that that's an interesting way to present money. A lot of people would think that, you know, and even the words that I ask people when I ask them to describe their relationship with money, it's very stressful, frustrating, embarrassing, anxious, all of these things that if you think about, if you were describing like your child that way or your friend, it wouldn't be a very healthy relationship. So it's one of those areas that I feel like we all have experience. It's hard, everyone has thoughts and feelings and stories about money that go back to when we were, you know, very, very young. So I think it's interesting to think about how you can understand that better, to have a more compassionate relationship with money, and the way that maybe, you know, maybe there are general times where there is a, you know, there's a certain amount of irritation in the world or frustration or this kind of, you know, and I think that we've seen that in the first part of this year, this like undercurrent of just anxiety. And I hear clients talk about this all the time, and they might not know how to explain it or where it's coming from. So they might look to things like politics or other things that they can say, see, this is why bad things are happening. This is why I can't make any money. This is why. And so I think it's interesting, like you said, to be a little bit more introspective about how we have our thoughts and feelings. So how do you take somebody through that? If somebody finds you and they just want help growing their business, and now all of a sudden you are asking for their birth and, you know, the time they were born.
Time.
Where
were you born and your birth time?
I love that. And I'm a 6'2" generator. So I know that enough about myself, because I find this all very fascinating. And I think people do like to learn more about themselves in general.
The first thing we do is we look at both your birth chart and we look at your business's birth chart. Okay. And I have been able to channel messages from people's businesses that helps them really start working as a team instead of against each other. So a lot of times when we create a business, we're like, it is us. Start to understand that there are things that your business cannot do that you do, and there are things that you do that your business cannot do. Then you start to hire the right people. You start to create the right teamwork and the right networks, and you start to really, really work with your business as its own energetic entity so that you can both achieve the same dream that you have in life and the same like soul mission that you have in life. And so the other aspect of it is there are these shadow aspects that each of these profiles tend to have. You know, like if you have a 3-5 profile for your business, then at some point in time, your business is probably going to need to transform into a different piece of itself. Or is going to learn to really, really work with those qualities. But that one profile tends to have a lot of really, really hard times as a business. And if you don't understand that going into it, then you don't know how to maximize the gifts that it really, really has. So that's the first foundational piece. Then we start to figure out, okay, like what are your goals? How much money is it going to cost to build out this framework? What are your offers that will be magic for both you and your business and attract the people that you want and attract, the kind of money that you want to come in so that you are also fulfilling your mission. And it just, it flows so much quicker. A process that used to take me 5 or 6 years with a business is taking me 12 to 18 months of like really growing your business. And it's because while you're growing your business, you're also doing all that shadow work and healing instead of like just shoving it down and then it causes an explosion. And then you have to like completely pivot your business later. Is like, if you work with it, it's more like working up and around a boulder or around a boulder with water than trying to like just keep bumping into the boulder. And you really, it's just magic when you start working with it. I have no other words.
Yeah, no, it's really, it's fascinating because I talk to a lot of people who do get to points where they've tried something and then they want to move to something else and they want to like burn the whole business to the ground. They want to change everything about it. And I'm wondering if that could have been at some point, maybe they stopped working with it and like that tension or that, just that feeling that everything they've done, everything that they've worked on now has to go back to the studs when that might not be the case at all. It might just be, subtle shifts or different things that you could do to make things feel better. But I feel like we do get to that where we don't understand, or we don't know, and we just think, oh, it's because I need to go do that or that, which can be very tempting, but also, can be very difficult to find success if you continuously do that.
So if we're talking about human design, a lot of business owners are projectors. So they're systems and processes people. And a lot of times they'll be like, I don't know why the system and process isn't working. And they keep trying to run into that wall. And it's because they're a solopreneur and they're trying to figure out why the system and process isn't working. And all they really need to do is hire 3 different people, even as subcontractors, and it will completely change how their business runs.
Yeah.
If they hire a manifestor to help them be creative, and then the generators to do the work that they are exhausting themselves doing, then that's really the subtle change that needs to happen in their business.
Yeah. No, I think that's such an interesting way to put that because we are kind of, like you said, we all have our own gifts and we have our own, work that we need to do. And sometimes we do feel like we're supposed to be able to do it all or do everything ourselves. And some of these things might feel very natural where for me, doing the actual work, I enjoy it. So if I was to say, hand that off, I would want that back, so there might be certain things that make sense for some of us business owners to hold on to. And then other things that makes a ton of sense to outsource as quickly as possible because they don't match your skill set or they really just don't feel very enjoyable to do or good. So I kind of love looking at it from that perspective, which also aligns very closely to what you said about the expenses and the fractional CFO and kind of understanding, because we might think, okay, I need that tool, I need that tool, I need that system, or maybe we need we need a person to help us. Maybe we need something completely different instead of just trying to find a quick solution or maybe a coach who can tell us what to do if that person isn't going to be able to really tell us the right answer or the answer sheet and then we can go fix it. So really interesting how you help people in that way.
Yeah, it's very non-traditional, but very just it's worked. And since I kind of brought this into my practice, like the lives of my clients are a lot richer. They're a lot more meaningful and they just have so much more joy in their business and wanting to go to work instead of like, oh my gosh, I have to walk into a pile of problems today.
Can you give any examples of any businesses or any clients that you've worked with that you've seen make a certain change that really did shift their business in a positive direction or maybe help them achieve goals that they might not have thought would have been realistic before they
So non-holistic business, because that's who you would expect me to totally be working with. But one of my clients who has really done the most work in this area is actually an electrician.
Okay.
So they started off as a solopreneur. It was basically them and their wife, and they were just kind of running, and they were like, I don't know what I'm doing, because I just, like, I quit my job and I started my own electrician, trade service. And so we started with the basics of like, here's your accounting, here's your this. And then we started bringing in his human design into it of like, hey, you're a projector. And so your sole mission in this business, like your queen bee role, if you want to go back to like clockwork, is that you are here to create the systems and processes and network and find the clients and the communities that are going to grow your business best. And so he ended up hiring a manifester to run one of his vans, but we didn't know he was a manifester at that time. And so he was running this van and he was doing the work that he needed to do, but he was always exhausted. And, there were some problems. And so I was like, well, if you can get him to give us his birth chart information, because he hears you talk about this all the time, it could be really, really beneficial for your company. And so his manifester has become his office manager / customer service representative, because he excels at sales and customer service relationships. Like that's where he's able to be most creative and create those end goals that the company needs. So now we have somebody who's creating, and now we have somebody who is doing all of the systems and processes. So his wife is a manifesting generator. So she's able to take the creatives and that systems and processes, and she's able to be like, okay, here is the software that we need to make sure that my tribe survives, which is what her kind of life purpose is like, she's here to make sure that her tribe gets through whatever happens in their life and how it really, really helps them succeed. So now we have these 3 people, and we've gone through and we've hired 4 different van type teams now, of all generators who just like to go out, get the job done, come home, clock out, and they're happy. And as long as they have like the system to work in and the process to work in and the software to work in, then it really, really helps the whole business click. And the wealth that they've been able to create from this is they've bought 4 rental houses this year. And it just, yeah.
Because like you mentioned a few times where I think it could feel like it's just too much. It's too frustrating, or I'm not good at this, or I don't want to be here anymore. And so I think that's a lot of times, and we don't look at other types of, maybe the solutions that we're aware of might not be working, the different tools, or the, hiring somebody and that person's frustrated too, or they don't know what to do. And so I think that's such an interesting way to kind of look at a team in a very, kind of as far as putting a team together. Granted, you got to hire the right people, but how that could have an impact. I think it's fascinating, and I love the fact that granted it is electric. It's all energy, right?
This energy, yeah.
So they kind of get it, but they get it in the very literal sense of it. So I think that's so fun. So tell me about how your business is changing. So when you look at this year coming up, when you're looking at the different patterns or the different things that you're seeing, how do you operate differently in these types of environments if you feel like we are, going to be in a period of reflection or a period of massive growth? Like how do you incorporate that into your business and how you market?
So I really, really use my schedule to my advantage, and looking and being able to see when certain aspects are coming up astrologically. It really helps me understand when I need to schedule challenges, when people are going to be more receptive to taking challenges. It really helps me understand times where I need to just not spend money and maybe wait a week before I make a big purchase, or if I need to be really, really careful with how I am empowering my subcontractors and my preferred bookkeepers, or if I need to take time away and focus on something that is a generator task for me. Am I in a creative period right now based upon like the lines that you're going through, or am I supposed to just be doing the work? And so when you take it and you look at it instead of just like your type and your authority according to human design, and then you start like really building in like those, like, is today a creative period? Is today a work period? Is today just a day I need to take off completely and sit and have like a couch rot day? and let my team do their thing, and then evaluate if there was any issues at the end of the day. Like, it really really helps to bring in all of those aspects that we normally just fight against every day because we go to work from 9 to 5 and do
Yeah.
the stuff.
No, I think, yeah, that's very interesting. And I think there's a lot of people that know when they're feeling those things or where they wish they could have this day off. And then we forget that we, if we own our own business or we run things, like we're
Mm-hmm.
kind of in control of our calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we kind of lose that that mindset and just force ourselves to go through things where we could actually be very much in control of our time and our our calendar and when people can set up meeting, when we're available and when we're not. So I like that you help people kind of reinforce that and feel more
Mm-hmm.
confident making those types of decisions, even if it sounds like, but I can't do that. That's not
Mm-hmm.
productive when it might be.
Yeah,
It
it
really will be.
you know it's hard when like every Wednesday there's this networking event and you're like, hey, I need to be there every Wednesday. But if you look at it and you're like, okay, well, these are the 5 days this year where collaboration is really really activating not only my chart but everybody else's chart, so these are going to be the first 5 most maximum days that I'm going to have to network. Instead of going in 52 times, you can cut it down to only going in 5 times
Mhm.
and let the magic work in your favor.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because a lot of times we do kind of just do what's on the calendar, even though we could look at our calendar differently and maybe free up a little bit more time before we keep going to these things and they start to feel painful
Mm-hmm.
and not productive. And who's going to go and want to, meet you and learn more about you if you're there unwillingly?
Yeah, yeah.
Can be
Um,
very tricky.
it also helps if you are not necessarily a generally collaborative person. If you're a generator and you are supposed to be doing the work, and it takes a lot of energy for you to go out and network and be with other people and be in other people's energy, and okay, these are the 5 days that I have that collaborations are working in my favor, then that is,
Yeah.
a whole bunch of opportunity that you have where you can work in your authority, where you're just going to work and doing your thing, whereas then you get to maximize those collaborations.
I think that's very, very interesting. I know there are some times where I am not up for networking. I'm not much of an, I don't even know what times of day or certain things that you just feel like you just don't have that energy left. And so I think it's an interesting way to look at your time and your effort and these things that we can't really put a dollar amount on, but we also can't get back. So,
Yeah.
um, tell me about, how you work with clients. Do people sign up with you? Do you work with people for a year? Do you do consultations? How do you help people if they're listening and they're thinking, gosh, this is something that would be really helpful for me
Mhm.
or for my team to know? How do how do you help your clients and what does the package or the sessions typically look like?
Mhm. So I created a magic framework. So the first thing that we do is we help you manifest your dreams. Like, what do you actually want to achieve in life? And does it kind of match with what everything in your chart is telling you to do and your business? And then we align you in your business. And that is all of the figuring out, like how you operate, how your team operates, how your business operates. And then we go into alignment and growth. And that's when we do all of your systems and processes. So we really bring in the fractional CFO at that level, or the profit first systems to help you really get set up for growth. Um, then we integrate everything, make sure everything is going back. So we kind of reevaluate everything. And then we turn you on to creative mode. And that's where we start scaling you, not just with this business, but like your whole entire like enterprise dream of like, I'm going to have rental properties and I'm going to have all of these different things. So we kind of walk you through this framework so that you don't get ahead of yourself and you have those really good foundational pieces. And then you're really, really set up to grow when you need it.
Think I love that you have a system in place for that. I think that it's very interesting. And you're also bringing in not just the business growth goals, but also the other things that might be outside of the business that the business is going to help to fund or the business is going to then be a part of in a different way. Such a healthy way, I think, to look at what we're doing and how we all of us get into, whatever we're doing, especially if we're entrepreneurs. There was a part of us that really felt like we were going to make an impact and a difference and that the work we did mattered. And I feel like you're kind of helping people hold on to that and just kind of look at it from a different lens, especially when they get to those times, which all of us will, where there might be some challenges or difficulties or things that we need to adjust. So I think that's really cool. How can people find you if they want to connect with you and learn more?
There's two places that's super easy to find me. You can find me on my website, www.thebeaconrock.com. I also write about the energy of the day, all weekdays on Substack at Metaphysical Money. So you can Google April Hunt or search on Substack, April Hunter or Metaphysical Money. And then we do EFT tapping, which really helps to like work through that shadow work. We do that every 4 days, and then bi-weekly. We work through the collective energies and just kind of like, what are we feeling with money today, and really work through those money blocks.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that I saw on your website that we didn't bring up, but the EFT tapping I think is a very interesting, and I think I was exposed to it a few years ago. And a woman that I knew that was a money coach, and she did do that, and it was interesting how we would, for anybody who's not familiar with it, like she would lead through a tapping exercise where you're literally tapping on different parts of your body, your forehead, temple, things like that. And she would see like how we felt before and then like give an assessment of how we felt after. And it was fascinating how this very non-invasive, somewhat, relaxing, I guess at that point, simple thing, could take our thoughts about something from like a 9 down to a 6 in like a short amount of time. So very, very interesting work, I think, but powerful. And it is just really releasing energy and really, I don't exactly know how it works, but I just felt like it works.
I had all the courses and read all the science books. And so scientifically, I know how it works, but I still think that there's an elemental of magic to it that we just don't totally get. And it's this connection between your mind and body and past experiences and future. And it's just, it all kind of like meshes together in these little electrical taps. And they're not electrical because it's just your hands, but it really does bring up so much pinpointed realizations. Like I was in therapy for many, many years, 10 years, because everybody should be in therapy, in my opinion. And a lot of the things that I spent just spinning my wheels in therapy on, I worked through with EFT tapping while I was doing my certifications. And I was like, holy cow, I just changed years of therapy in months.
Yeah. No, it's super interesting, but I love that. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. Everybody, the Metaphysical Money, if you want to follow along, read these. I think that is you can find it on Substack or go to the website. April, thank you so much for joining me today. This was really cool. I really appreciate the way that you help people, the way that you look at business and money, I think is refreshing, because we can only stare at the numbers and look at the so much without thinking that maybe there is something that we can tap into that is a little bit bigger than ourselves and try to help us thrive. And like you said, have that prosperity, not just the meeting the needs and getting by. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And thank you everyone for listening. If you're interested in connecting or learning more, please head over to my website, mistylynch.com. You can find a copy of my book, Demystifying Money, or listen to former episodes of the podcast. I would love to hear some of your thoughts, and you could follow us on social media at Misty Lynch CFP. Thank you so much, and we'll talk again next week. Don't forget to share with friends and family, and together let's demystify the world of money. Knowledge is the key to financial empowerment.